I'm joined now by North Carolina State Supreme Court Justice Allison Riggs. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me back yet again.
So, we have some very big news that I've spoken about on my channel already, but congratulations on the district court ruling affirming your win and basically negating all of Jefferson Griffin, your Republican opponent's efforts to cast off more than 60,000 ballots. Can I have your reaction first and foremost to this saga being over? But granted, he could still appeal, but for all intents and purposes, very much looks like it's over.
Yeah, yesterday was a huge win for the voters of North Carolina, for the voters across this country who were threatened by this effort to selectively cancel the votes of people that a disappointed candidate believed didn't support him after an election. It was rewarding to have the federal judge agree with all of our federal constitutional arguments, but today I celebrate the people of North Carolina who stood hand in hand with me for the last 6 months and said, democracy's not going to die here, not on our watch.
What do you make of the fact that this was a Trump appointed judge who handed down this very definitive ruling?
It's a great reminder that judges can put politics aside, put people and their duty to uphold the Constitution above party. It's what I've been doing on the bench for the last 2.5 years. It's what judges from all political stripes did after the 2020 election when there was an attempt to overturn that presidential election. This is what people deserve from judges. And I hope that folks take away from this that an independent judiciary, one that does the right thing without fear or favor, is something worth fighting for, that we can get back there. And it's what I'm going to be working on tirelessly here in North Carolina over the next two election cycles.
This effort by Jefferson Griffin was so egregious that even a Trump appointed federal district court judge summarily discarded all of his arguments. And yet, despite that, you still have judges in, your own colleagues on the North Carolina Supreme Court who did opt to or did rule to move forward these arguments. And of course, again, that had to be summarily shut down when it jumped from the state court system to the federal court system. But, going back to work and seeing these people who are so off base and who were so willing to be complicit in such a blatantly illegal scheme, again, so illegal that even a Trump-appointed judge was willing to summarily discard all of these arguments. How do you go back and face these people, your own colleagues on the bench?
What I can tell you is I will go back to court tomorrow, committed as always to serving the people of North Carolina and doing the best I can to make sure that this court is reminded of and does its job in serving the people. I also believe that this is a moment for North Carolina voters to realize the importance of our state courts and the importance of electing people of strong constitutional convictions, people who
Yeah.
will put voters' rights over their own personal political ambition. And I've talked to so many voters over the last 6 months who were lumped in that 68,000 voter challenge, people who didn't vote for me. And I've been able to say to them, I'm sorry I didn't earn your vote in November. I will work hard to earn it in my next election. And in the meantime, I will fight tooth and nail to make sure your vote counts, regardless of how you voted. That's what North Carolinians deserve. We won't let our guard down on future attacks against voting rights, against the very structure of our democracy, and we will use this as a long-term accountability tool to highlight the importance of an independent judiciary.
Is there any likelihood that Jefferson Griffin's team will appeal this ruling to the Fourth Circuit, which, by the way, has a very pro-democracy bend? So I'm assuming that, if he couldn't win in front of a Trump-appointed district court judge, then things aren't going to fare much better at the appeals court. But then again, I don't know what the ultimate strategy is.
Yeah, I don't know where my team is getting prepared for an appeal. My opponent has 7 days to appeal this ruling, and we'll be prepared to respond forcefully and quickly. I don't understand why this has gone on 6 months, so I
Right.
don't understand why it would continue to go on. But that doesn't change my day to day, which is fighting for the people of North Carolina and their right to decide who represents them, their right to have their voice heard, and have voters decide elections, not politicians or courts.
What is your reaction to the fact that very much the same scheme that Republicans were hoping to deploy in favor of Donald Trump in 2024, if the situation arose that he needed it, instead he won that election, but your case, your election was the specific one that they decided to try and employ this scheme to try and in broad daylight overturn a free and fair election. I'm sure you didn't enter this process with thousands and thousands and thousands of races across the country thinking that yours was going to be the one that would not get certified for 6 months and would be the poster child for Republican efforts to subvert democracy. And yet here you are. And so can I have your reaction now that the dust has settled on the fact that you were kind of inadvertently thrust into this position?
I knew there would be post-election litigation. I had my legal team ready to go before election day because I felt the threat was that real that we might have litigation and action similar to what happened in 2020 after 2024. You're right that I didn't expect to be the only one sort of standing in this place right now, but
Yeah.
in many ways, I'm grateful that my experience and my prior work well equipped me for this. I am grateful that I had the infrastructure and the people around me willing to stand firm for 6 months when there's a lot of things happening in the world. That was no small feat. So I was happy to take on this fight for the people of this state, for the people of this country who want better, who deserve better, and who want people in government to serve them first and foremost. And so it's been challenging for sure, but it was a tough fight that I was up for, and I'm not letting my guard down until my hand is on the Bible again and
Yeah.
swearing my oath to serve out my full 8 year term.
I know you had mentioned previously speaking to voters who, may not have cast their ballot for you, but who got caught up in this whole machine, in the gears of this machine that was Republicans' effort to discard legal and lawfully cast ballots. And anecdotal though it may be, was there anybody that you spoke with that kind of expressed disgust or even regret not voting for you, but who voted for Jefferson Griffin, and yet who saw the overt scheme, the election subversion scheme that he and his team were running?
Yeah, I mean we've met them, we've heard from those voters, local elected Republican representatives who followed every rule, did everything right. You know, on one hand, you have the last 6 months being really harmful to people's faith in the electoral system and the possibility for feeding a cynicism and a distrust of the electoral process. And on the other hand, you had an opportunity for me and others across the political spectrum to join hands and say this isn't right. Have Republican leaders come out and say this isn't right. Former Republican Governor Pat McCrory, that our service members who raise their hand to serve us shouldn't be raising their hands to be targeted based on the county in which they maintain their permanent residence, that we shouldn't be canceling ballots in a Supreme Court race when these same ballots were fine in every other race up and down the ballot. This has been an opportunity to build bridges in a swing state where elections will continue to be tight. And I'm always looking for the positive, and I think we've built some relationships that hopefully will ensure that we change the face of North Carolina's judiciary because voters have that power here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Voters have the power to elect judges who will defend their rights, even to their own detriment. I have been fighting nonstop for all of these voters, even the ones who didn't vote for me. And that's what voters in this state and in this country deserve.
And finally, let's finish off with this. You have obviously been engaged in a long bout of post-election litigation, like you mentioned, 6 months. When you heard the news that this Trump-appointed federal district court judge ruled completely in your favor, what do you do in the immediate aftermath of that? When you finally sigh that breath of relief, what do you do to like blow off some steam after this grueling process?
The last 20 hours, 16 hours for me has been really focused on reaching out to people to thank them because there hasn't been one day in the last 6 months where I've woken up and felt alone and
Yeah.
felt like there haven't been people wrapping me in their love, support, and prayers. And this is a moment for me to just live in that gratitude, share it with others, and remind people that we have work to do yet ahead, but we can celebrate each other and celebrate a great win. And I'm not going anywhere. Voters are going to keep seeing me across the state because I think part of what being a good public servant means is being transparent and accountable and in community. And I'm going to continue living my values that way and working to ensure that we elect great judges up and down the ballot.
Well, look, I've been lucky enough to have gotten the chance to know you over these last few months. My audience has gotten a chance to know you over these last few months. Could not be more grateful for the sense of fight that you've brought to this whole saga, and for the grace and class that you've had. Certainly, to a degree that I would not be capable of if I was in your shoes. So, thank you, for seeing your way through to the end of this thing and fighting as hard as you did, and very glad to see the resolution that we got right here, and really excited to watch your career on the North Carolina Supreme Court over these next few years, and hopefully subsequent election cycles after that. So, Justice Riggs, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the win.
Thank you so very much.